meeting is now being recorded, and I'll take the sedence for this meeting of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee on the 31st of October 2023. I have apologies from Councillor Buchanan, but I can see that Councillor Keat has joined as a substitute. I also have apologies from Councillor Donnelly, but Councillor Dewar has joined as a substitute. Also present today are Councillors Fulton and Gowland. Councillor Handybode? No, not seeing you present. Also present today are Councillors Johnson-Dempsey, Kerr, Lockhart and McDougall. We also have in attendance Councillor Fagan and the Chief Executive, Cleland Snedden. Also present today are colleagues from Audit Scotland and East Lothian Council, and we also have a number of council officers present. So with that, I'll pass you back to the Chair to commence today's business. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll start as usual with any declarations of interest. Not seeing any. Okay, so we'll move on to item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting. Any questions around those or matters arising? Okay, I'll move the minutes as a correct record. Would someone like to second?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Dempsey. Okay, moving on to item 3, the leadership of the development of new local strategic priorities, best value thematic work in South Lanarkshire Council. And this was a paper that will be presented by John Boyd, Audit Director from Audit Scotland. So I'll pass over to you, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. The report you have in front of you is the conclusion from our best value thematic review. The Accounts Commission, under the Code of Audit Practice, have directed auditors to report across the 32 local authorities on the effectiveness of leadership and the development of the new local strategic priorities. Our review involved a review of strategic plans and corporate documentation, minute reviews, as well as discussion with officers and a sample of elected members. Page 14 of the pack outlines the key scope of the review, focusing on the clarity of the Council's vision and the level of engagement with key partners and alignment of operational plans and resources. A report includes a key summary of the findings from our audit, and we've concluded that the Council has clearly outlined its vision and priorities and demonstrated a clear commitment to empowering local communities. The Council recognises the challenges faced in addressing inequalities, and we've found that resource plannings are aligned with achieving the overall Council plan and focus on activity and service improvement. Our report is set in the context of the significant financial challenges facing the Council. While we'll touch later on as part of our annual audit report, I think it's important to highlight that the report is set in this context and the challenges facing the Council in the coming years. We found collaborative working between officers and members, and this is reflected as well in cross-party engagement for significant initiatives. This will be an important aspect for the Council going forward as it faces difficult challenges. In Appendix 1, we've identified 2 recommended areas of improvement for officers. These are around ensuring the requirements of the Fairer Scotland duty, the legal requirements of that responsibilities are reflected within decision-making papers and key documents. We also identified the opportunity to ensure continued support for elected members to to allow them to discharge their responsibilities and to make sure they've got appropriate training and support in their roles. Overall, the Council has demonstrated clear vision and leadership with effective decision-making facing to support the Council face these difficult challenges in the years ahead. The Council will need to make sure it maintains a focus on its key priorities and that this is reflected in its decision-making. But happy to take any questions on the report.
Thanks, Mr Boyd. Do we have any questions on this report? Don't see any hands up. Okay, well, just to thank you for that comprehensive piece of work, Mr Boyd. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 4A, External Auditor's Report. Again, this is back over to Mr Boyd to provide us an update on this report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members may be familiar with the format of this report. This is our overall audit report concluding on the audit for the year ended 31st of March 2023. The report summarises the conclusions of our work over the financial statements for the year ended 31st of March, as well as the conclusions from our wider audit dimensions covering financial management and sustainability, vision, leadership and governance, use of resources to improve outcomes, as well as our conclusions on the Council's abilities to meet its responsibilities in relation to best value. I'll touch on some of the key aspects of the report. In terms of the financial statements audit, pages 7 and 59 of the pack to page 13 of the report and 65 of your pack summarise the conclusions from our audit work. In accordance with auditing standards and the Code of Audit Practice, we've highlighted some of the key aspects and significant matters arising through our audit work. For the year ended 31st of March 2023, we've highlighted the adjustments in relation to the job evaluation or the outcome of the job evaluation scheme. This wasn't reflected in the draft accounts because the outcome of the evaluation programme wasn't fully known, and therefore the backdated element was correctly reflected in the updated accounts. We've also included there details around the pension asset ceiling. For the year ended 31st of March, councils, and consistent across Scotland, councils for the first time in a number of years have reported net pension assets. These historically have been pension liabilities. Under the Code and international financial reporting standards, there's a requirement that the net asset position is essentially capped at what the net benefit would be to the council, essentially through potential future reductions in contribution rates. That cap is calculated under a standard called IFRIC 14. The financial statements and the unaudited accounts reflected that cap, and we've highlighted that in our annual report that was appropriately recognised in the accounts. There is one unadjusted or adjusted difference that's reflected in the final accounts that are presented today, but weren't included at the time of writing our annual report. And this is in relation to unfunded pension benefits. These are historic pension liability, pension obligations that aren't offset through pension scheme assets. Late in the audit process, it was identified that the IFRIC 14 calculation excluded the unfunded element, so these have been reflected within the updated accounts and we'll include it in the final version of our annual report. The impact of this was a recognition of a pension liability of 115 million. The corresponding entry is to pension reserves of 115 million, and that's been appropriately reflected within the updated accounts. In terms of other significant aspects to draw the committee's attention to, we've included in there a response to the significant audit risks identified through our audit planning. As part of any financial statements audit, we consider, or there's a presumed risk around management override of controls. That's not necessarily reflective of our concerns at the Council, but is actually an expected risk for all auditors to consider, the risk of fraud at an organisation. I'm pleased to report we've no significant issues identified through our audit work and concluded there was no matters to draw the committee's attention to. We've also included details around the valuation of property, plant, equipment. This was an area of risk identified through our audit plan, reflecting the value and the material value of land and buildings within your annual accounts, as well as the level of subjectivity and estimation around the valuation. You may be aware that this has been a particular area of focus from auditors, and it's an increasing area of focus from auditors as audit standards have been revised and the expectation of auditors and audit work over valuations has increased. During the year, we had significant challenge to both management and the appointed auditors around the valuation, and we have raised a recommendation with an annual report just around enhancing some of the valuation process, including the creation of a final annual valuation report as at the year end. However, I'm pleased to report we're satisfied that there are no material errors or omissions within the accounts, and that the valuations are free from material misstatement. In terms of some of our key aspects of our wider audit, our report includes a summary of the finding of the thematic review, and the key findings are included within our annual audit report. In terms of some of the other aspects, probably the key message from the annual report is really looking at financial management and financial sustainability. Our report highlights the robust processes that the Council has in place to ensure sound financial management. The Council this year and historically has operated within budget, and as a result you'll see in the annual accounts an increased position in the general fund and the general reserves position. However, we've highlighted in the report some of the significant challenges facing the Council and the level of uncertainty that the Council faces in the coming years through both inflationary cost pressures as well as operational pressures. And we've highlighted how, although the general reserves position has increased, a significant proportion of this is earmarked to future commitments or future Council priorities, actually leaving a relatively low level of essentially uncommitted earmarked reserves, and therefore highlighting the importance of ongoing focus around financial sustainability and financial resilience. And we've included a number of recommendations just highlighting the importance, particularly over the coming years, of ensuring that decision-making processes incorporate some of that or reflect the financial pressures facing the Council. Our report includes a summary of recommendations arising during the course of the audit, and these are included within the appendix to the report. We've also included, there were 3 adjustments arising during the course of the audit, and these have been included within the appendix to the report. And I'm pleased to report there were no unadjusted misstatements to draw the committee's attention to. I should highlight that in finalising our report and finalising the accounts, there were some further minor changes to the annual accounts which aren't included within our draft report, just to ensure that were issued to the committee in a timely manner, but will include in the final version. This includes a disclosure adjustment in reference to unfunded liability from the financial statements on page 50 and 115 to remove that reference. There was also reference to the unaudited accounts being authorised for issue, and that's been changed to audited accounts now that the completion that the audit has been completed. And we've also there's been a reference to the IFRIC 14, as I touched on earlier, the impact of IFRIC 14 within note 13 of the annual accounts. There was also just a disclosure around the transactions that were reported in 22-23 financial year. This is in relation to the group accounts, where the council has historically in the group position corrected where the group accounts have been finalised and there's been minor changes to those accounts. They've been reflected as prior year corrections. It should really only be material adjustments that are corrected, so the revised accounts have taken those adjustments in year. But I'm pleased to report that they've all been correctly reflected through the final accounts that are presented in front of you today. That was really the key aspects of the annual audit and the audit report that I was looking to draw the committee's attention to. I appreciate that's a bit of a quick run through of quite a large and extensive audit and audit report. I would just finally like to thank officers for all their help and support during the course of the audit. This is year one of our new audit engagement, and that brings along its own challenges as essentially a new set of eyes that come across the audit. I can't thank management enough for all their help and support during the course of the audit. And look forward to working with them in the coming years. But happy to take any questions on the annual audit report or the audit itself.
Thanks very much for that update, and also thank you for everyone who was involved in pulling that together, not least yourself, Mr. Boyd. So do we have any questions? Councillor Fulton.
Hi, morning everybody. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask, and I'll ask them all at one time rather than jumping back and forth. So the first one is on page 71 and it's point 58, and it's regarding the rack inspection at council houses. When do you think we'll have an outcome to this investigation, and will it come back to this committee or will it come back to Housing and Technical Resources? So that's question number one. Question number two is a more general question on the action plan on pages 98 to 101, and it's basically will the plans addressed in progress be made reported back to this committee or to relevant other committees? And then the last question is on page 101 regarding the dormant trust for the East Kilbride Information Technology. Do you know if there's been a decision made on that? That's all the questions I've got just now, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Fulton. Can I ask Paul to reply?
I'm happy to do that, Chair. I'll start off with a response. I'm going to hand over to Jackie Taylor for the latter 2 points, Councillor Fulton. The first point, picking up on page 71 and the points at paragraphs 57 and 58, any outcome from that would go back to the Housing and Technical Resources Committee in terms of that piece of analysis work that we were talking about there. If you're okay with that, I'll hand over to Jackie for answers on those other 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you. Just in relation to the action plans that you mentioned, all of the actions that have been identified within these reports will be tracked and monitored by Yvonne and her team in internal audit. The actions will be reported back to the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee as part of external audit reports going forward, and also we'll get assurance through the internal auditor's year-end report on the actions. In terms of the trust, the trustees of the iTech Trust have approved that the funds are to be used to provide a digital support service. That is to help support young unemployed people in the East Kilbride area who are digitally excluded, and that will allow 37 people to receive a device and access to broadband for a 12-month period. They'll also get support from the Employability Service around skills and training around that. Hope that answers your question. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jackie. I don't see Alistair coming back. Are there any other questions?
Councillor Fulton.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Oh, no, it's disappeared again. Okay. Are there any other questions? If there's no other questions, can I ask the committee to approve and move this report, please? And can I have a seconder?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. I did also miss the moving and approving of item 3 as well, so I'll just retrospectively move and ask for approval and seconding on that, if that's okay.
Happy to second that one as well, Chair.
Thank you very much. Apologies for that, and thank you very much for that report. So moving on to item 5.
4B.
Sorry, not on the ball this morning, sorry. So item 4B, of course, Mark. External Auditors Report 2022-23, the South Lanarkshire Council Charitable Trusts, and I'll pass over to Mr Ferris from Audit Scotland to speak to this, please.
Good morning, thank you, Chair. This covers pages 105 to 128 of your pack and covers the following 3 trust funds, which is the South Lanarkshire Council Educational Trusts, South Lanarkshire Council Charitable Trust and East Kilbride Information Technology Centre Trust. The papers cover a very similar format to the council papers you considered earlier. Each of them has a summary paper, my proposed internal auditor's report and a management letter of representation at Appendix B for each of the trusts. I can confirm that I intend to issue an unqualified audit opinion for each of these trusts following approval of the committee, and can confirm there are no unadjusted misstatements. Happy to take any questions on the reports.
Thanks, Mr Ferris. Any questions on the Council Charitable Trust paper? Don't see any questions. Okay, thank you. So I'll ask the committee to approve this, and I'll move that and need a seconder, please. Councillor Fulton?
Yeah, I would just second this.
Thanks, Councillor Fulton. Thank you. So item 5, audited annual accounts 2022-23, and I'll ask Jackie Taylor, Head of Finance, to speak to this paper, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper covers the formality now regarding the accounts, now that we have heard from our auditors and the audit is complete. Members of the committee are now required to consider approval of the audited accounts for signature. Members of this committee have received copies of the accounts, which was emailed them to you under separate cover. Once we have signed off the accounts, the accounts will be issued to all elected members for information, and will also be available to the general public on the Council's website. So in terms of our recommendations, we're asking that the committee notes that the accounts have received a clean audit certificate. We're asking that the audited accounts and the charitable trust accounts can now be approved for signature. We're asking that it be noted that the external auditor's report will be referred to the South Lanarkshire Council for information, and that the audited accounts will be available on the Council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Do we have any questions on the annual accounts? No questions? In that case, I will move that the committee approves these accounts and require a seconder, please.
Aye, I'll second.
Thanks, Councillor Fulton. I should say at this point, Councillor Fagan and Cleland can leave if you wish.
Chair, with your permission, just a couple of comments. I'd like to note the collaborative work of our colleagues from Audit Scotland and how they've gone about this audit. There have been challenges for audit work throughout the UK and real challenges in particular around the timescales. The team that Audit Scotland have fielded here locally with John and Mark and their colleagues, their work has been exemplary. I also want to note the work of internal audit through Yvonne's team, a lot of reliance on which the audit work can take. And finally, just the financial stewardship, again, of our colleagues in finance and corporate resources, which has led to such a positive couple of papers in relation to the audited accounts. Thank you.
Thanks, Clint. I'm sure the committee would echo your remarks. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, 2022-23, External Quality Assessment of Internal Audit Service. And I'll ask Yvonne Douglas, our Audit and Compliance Manager, to speak to that, please.
We'll have Duncan afterwards as well.
And
so Yvonne will introduce.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll provide a brief introduction and then pass over to Duncan Steinbank just to take us through the report itself. Just by way of reminder to members of the Audit Committee, the Internal Audit Service within the Council is required to be delivered in conformance with a set of standards that's known as the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards. You'll be familiar with references to size within the audit reports that come to this committee. We're required to self-assess ourselves against compliance with the standards, but once in each 5-year period, we have to have an external assessment of compliance. I advised members back in September 2022 that the external review was due in 22-23 because the last formal review that we had undertaken had been back in 17-18. East Lothian Council were nominated as the external reviewer by the Chief Internal Audit Group in Scotland, and the report that you have attached sets out the findings from this assessment. The main areas for improvement are captured within 4.2. A response to those points within a wider action plan is also attached to the report in pages 154 and 155. The overall conclusions of the report were positive. I'm going to pass you to Duncan to take you through the detail of that. And if I can just draw members' attention to the recommendation at this point is that you're going to be asked to note the content of the report. But if I can pass you to Duncan at this point, he'll take you through the detail of the report that he wrote. Thanks, Duncan.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Hopefully people can hear me. There we go. I can see myself up on the screen now. It says, I would echo Yvonne's comments. This is a very positive report. The section 2 of the report provides my overall conclusion of the external assessment of South Lanarkshire Council's internal audit function, was that it generally conforms to public sector internal audit standards. I would note that 7 of the assessment areas, the service fully conforms with public sector insurance standards, and in 7 other areas, there have been recommendations really of a continuous improvement nature, and 8 of the 9 recommendations made have been agreed, and you'll find those in Appendix D of the report. It says the key areas that I've highlighted, which Yvonne's also put on 4.2 of her report, are that the Chief Audit Executive should, under the standards, report in their own name to the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee, enhancing the clarity of independence. I note that this is the one recommendation that hasn't been agreed, and I'm aware of the reasons for that, but I can give assurance that both Yvonne and her team do act appropriately independently, and this would just be a final element on there of adding in assurance to the committee there. I've got job profiles and descriptions should be refreshed for all internal audit staff to provide a clear expectation of what the role requirements are, and that's been agreed and will be implemented. Consideration should begin into developing a formal questionnaire or feedback mechanism for clients to obtain quantifiable client feedback. I know the team get feedback from their clients, but that provides a quantifiable element of feedback from client groups when audits are completed, and that the audit and compliance manager should complete the assurance mapping exercise, which she already had underway, and report those findings back to yourself and the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Thanks, Mr. Steenbank and Yvonne. Do we have any questions on this report? No questions today. Just to thank you again, and Yvonne, a tremendous amount of work went into this report. So thank you very much for that. Good to see it. Okay, so now can we agree to move this report? And I will move and require a seconder, please.
Hi, I'll second that. Thanks.
Moving on to item 7, which is our standard internal audit activity report as at the 13th of October 2023, and I'll pass back to Yvonne again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this is the standard activity report. The period covered by this report is the 5th of August through to the 13th of October. Key points for the committee to note: 9% of the audit plan completed to draft, but probably more important at this stage of the year, 26 assignments in progress from the 32 in total that were due to deliver by March 2024. So generally good progress across the audit plan, albeit a lower percentage has progressed to a draft report at this stage. I've tried to give you some comfort around the kind of work that we've been doing around the NFI, the National Fraud Initiative, about some investigative activities and work on our external client audit plans. And you'll see the output of that from Appendix 2, which is on page 161, where all the assignments that were completed in the period that I'm reporting to you were all to the Leisure Trust, which is one of our external clients. So good progress across those clients in the period. At the last committee, we were asked to provide a wee bit more information around work that we were doing in Oracle Fusion, because that was a significant part of our audit plan for this year. I've started to introduce some detail around that. I can pick this up in future activity reports as well to continue to give you information in terms of our involvement in this project. So that's set out starting at paragraphs 4.3 about our commitment in terms of resources, essentially one auditor and one advisor at this point, although recognising the fact that the work extends across the entire team. This is quite a crucial period for us. We're entering into what is called user acceptance testing. So this is us actually testing the new system, and internal audit will have a role in that in terms of testing processes and, more importantly, the internal controls within those processes, which will feed back as part of the user acceptance testing programme. We continue to attend the project review board, and at 4.5 I'm capturing some of the more kind of detailed items that we've been considering of recent around masking of bank account details, and also looking at authorisation and view only access. So this is going to be a significant part of the team's work through to the end of March, and I'll continue to capture detail, as I said, to give the committee a flavour of the work that we've been doing. As we normally do, I've attached key performance indicators at Appendix 1. I don't think there's anything of significance there to bring to your attention. There's a couple of comments, again, in terms of the progress with the plan, and just the fact that there was no audit actions that fell due in the period to 30 September, and that's why there are no statistics in relation to that indicator. Aside from that, the report references the SIAS, which formed a separate item in this agenda, and there's nothing else significant within this report to bring to the committee's attention. So if I can just take you back to the recommendation at 2.1, it is that you know progress. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Yvonne. Do we have any questions? I don't have any questions, but thanks for the continuing update on the Oracle Fusion project that we asked for before. That's appreciated. Okay, so I'll ask the committee to approve, and I'll move that. Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second. Thanks.
Okay, so moving on to item 8, our year-end risk management report 2022-23, and review of Council's top risks 23-24. And can I ask Scott Dunsmore to speak to this, please?
Thanks, Chair. So just to take through the key findings in the report, compliance with the risk management strategy is covered at section 4 of the report. Resources continue to demonstrate full compliance, and that is supported by the year-end compliance statement, which is attached to Appendix 1 to the report. Section 5 covers progress and delivery of actions to mitigate top risks, and we've achieved 60% against a target of 90% at the year-end, so there has been a bit of slippage there. 6 actions have been carried forward, and those will be progressed throughout the remainder of this financial year. The main reason probably for those carried forward are conflicting priorities, some personnel changes, and a number of significant IT projects on the go, which has pushed a couple of the IT actions back. The main part of the report is covered at section 6, and that's the results of the review of the Council's top risk register. The main points I wanted to bring to the committee's attention is that there's 5 new risks being added to the register this year, and I'll just run through those quickly. The first addition is around delivery of the economic strategy. The second new risk is implications of the Fire and Rescue Service unwanted fire alarms policy. The third one is in connection with compliance with expected standards and improvements identified by regulatory bodies. Fourth new risk is third and private sector market capacity. So that one's around providers struggling in the current economic climate. In some cases, we might see a deterioration in service standards and potential provider closures. The knock-on effect is that the Council requires to source alternative service provision. The fifth and final addition is inability to maintain infrastructure, assets and properties in a safe and well-maintained condition. Others have spoken about the financial constraints at present, so that's quite a significant factor there. And the second half of that new risk is around failure to achieve objectives in asset and property reviews. So that's the 5 new additions. Below that section at 6.2, you will see other developments with Council top risks, so I won't go through all of those, but coming back to the funding one, that continues to present significant challenges for the Council. A high level of savings to be achieved over the next 2 financial years, and the funding risk remains top of the risk register at present. Another one just to bring to the committee's attention is the adverse weather risk. That description has now been updated to cover potential damage to council properties and housing stock. There was quite significant issues experienced by the council last year with significant burst pipes in council housing. So you'll have seen recently the storm Babette hit the country. Thankfully, no significant issues in South Lanarkshire Council area, but that did present some real problems in other parts of the country, North East in particular, and we're bracing ourselves just now for the next storm, which is due to hit in the next couple of days. As a result of the changes in that section of the report, the updated risk register for 23-24 is attached to Appendix 2 to the report. The only other part I wanted to bring to the committee's attention is the risk profile for the council. So that really just gives you an indication of the number of risks in high and very high brackets. So that's covered at 9.4, and you'll see table 3, which summarises the risk profile for the council. So in there, 38.5% of risks are now in the very high bracket, and 61.5% are in the high bracket. There were 6 in the very high bracket last year. That's gone up to 10 this year. So the risk profile is out with our ideal within the risk management strategy. However, I don't think that's unexpected in the current economic climate. So that concludes the report. Just in terms of what we're asking the committee to note, it's around the compliance levels with the strategy and progress in delivering actions, and we're also asking that the committee notes the updated risk register for 23-24. That concludes the report. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mr Dunsmore. Do we have any questions? Councillor Kerr.
Hi, can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, right. Can I just ask, at 6.2, the 5 new risks that have been added to the register, can I just get some more explanation on the implications of the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service unwanted fire alarm signals policy within the council's non-domestic estate? Just what does that mean, really? I'm just not understanding that.
No worries, Councillor. Yeah, this is a policy that came in earlier this year, whereby the Fire and Rescue Service no longer automatically respond to fire activations. We basically need to confirm that there is an actual fire that takes place before they will come out. So our health and safety team have issued guidance on this to resources in terms of attendance to alarms, particularly out hours, to make sure that there is an actual fire there, so that can be reported back to the fire service.
Happy with that, Councillor Kerr?
Yes, that explains it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I actually have a question. And it's to see if this is covered by your normal risk. But obviously the terrible situation in the Middle East at the moment could potentially result in a further increase in oil prices. Surmising here. Would that be captured as one of the risks that you already have, or would you raise that as a separate risk?
Okay, I think that one's probably covered under the main funding risk. So within our risk cards, we do go into a bit more detail. I think we've just got kind of key risk descriptions in here, but all of the sort of issues around the whole sort of situation economically and situations and war-related issues are covered in that card.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Dunn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we have no other questions, can I ask the committee to note the report and thank Scott again for an extensive report and the work done by yourself and your team. So I'll move the report and can I ask for a seconder, please.
Did you hear me there?
We didn't hear you.
Sorry, I'll second the report.
Thanks, Councillor Fulton. And thanks again, Mr. Dunsmore.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this paper brings a summary of the Audit Scotland Local Government Overview Report, and which was published earlier in the year. So it's an annual thing that the Audit Scotland publish their overview reports, and they really present a sort of state of local government, looking at the situation local government finds it's in, and the challenges and opportunities that there are. Increasingly, it's challenges rather than opportunities, but they're generally a very comprehensive read. So this current report is the latest in a series that Audit Scotland have been doing, which have been looking at the pandemic and its impacts and aftermath. So the 21 report looked at the initial response phase to the pandemic, and the 22 report looked at the second year of the pandemic. But this 23 report looks at how has the pandemic affected councils and their performance, what are the current and future challenges facing local government, and how well placed are councils to deal with those challenges. So the key messages in the Audit Scotland report are replicated in this report at section 4, starting at 4.1, and the text there is essentially lifted from the Audit Scotland report, so it's not been summarised or in any way changed. I'm not going to go through all of those. I don't think there'd be any surprises to anybody reading those items. They're all very familiar topics that we're dealing with at the moment. At 4.2, though, Audit Scotland essentially summarises all of that fairly concisely by saying that councils have never faced such a challenging situation, with demand and workforce pressures deepening after the COVID-19 pandemic and funding forecast to reduce in real terms. Radical change achieved through greater collaboration is urgently needed if councils are to maintain services. So that essentially summarises very much the big message in this overview report. So the rest of this paper gives some more detail in terms of the considerations Audit Scotland have looked at to come to those conclusions, and there's a lot of detail in there. So as we typically do with these reports, we have lifted the recommendations and we've put them into a table at 5.5. So the recommendation is on the left, and then we've given a South Lanarkshire perspective on that. What are we doing? If action's needed, what are we going to do about it? So that's the recommendations and a South Lanarkshire position. Audit Scotland have also, as they have done in the last few reports, produced a supplement to the main report itself, which they suggest it's a set of questions that councillors might want to ask themselves. So we have taken those questions and we've put them in an appendix. Many of them are the same as the recommendations, but there's a few additional ones, slightly different angles sometimes. So again, we have put those in the appendix and suggested a sort of South Lanarkshire stance on that. So essentially that's the report, recommendation being to note the content. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Reid. Do we have any questions on that report? Can I ask a quick question then, Mr. Reid? So, is it primarily based around the impact of COVID? Because I noticed that just mentioning the workforce pressures that were, arose as a part of COVID. Obviously, there was other workforce pressures which would have arisen as part of Brexit. Terrible word. Could you just comment on that, please?
Yeah, I think you could debate the causal factors that have led to some of the issues that are identified. I think it's the legacy, I think, of COVID, and COVID plays a role in many of those challenges, but it's not by any means the only factor. And so the workforce one, yes, is an example where there are other things coming into play, but certainly COVID it features large in the landscape, and we're now looking really at the ongoing legacy and some of the longer terms, a bit like long COVID for people, long COVID for society and organisations is something that we're looking at. So I don't think it's not just COVID. There are other items mentioned in the report, but not given as much prominence as COVID.
Okay, thanks. I think the long COVID for society is quite a good way of putting it. We've got a couple more questions coming in. Councillor Keat.
Thank you very much, Chair. I was having some audio difficulties there. You're able to hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely fine. It wasn't a question as such, it was just a quick observation on paragraph 4.2 on page 174, and I think that just brings home the stark reality of the financial situation we're in as a local government, as it's the case throughout Scotland. And I think this is something we need to be transparent with, both in terms of our workforce and in our constituents. And I would just like to use this platform to encourage all members to encourage their constituents, the groups that they're involved with, to get involved in the the budget consultation exercise, the early exercise, to let us know their priorities, and obviously hopefully we can inform that our approach. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Keat. Councillor Johnson-Dempsey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I thought I'd put my hand down. Yeah, I was just going to reiterate Councillor Keats' point around I actually couldn't hear the report, and I know some other councillors haven't either. The audio online, it's actually returned. I couldn't hear you either, but it looks like it's returned now.
I don't know about the report, but I think I forgot to switch my mic on. Hopefully, hopefully you're okay with that. Okay, in which case I shall ask the committee to approve the report. Thank Mr. Reid for presenting it and ask for a seconder, please. Councillor Keat.
I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Keat. Okay, so moving on to item 10, which is our forward programme for future meetings. And I'll ask Elizabeth Ann to speak to this report, please. Elizabeth Ann.
Thanks, Chair. This is a standard report for noting that comes to each meeting of this committee. The background is set out at paragraph 3.1, and the purpose of the report is set out at 1.1, and it's to advise members of the forward programme for the meetings of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee. In this case, we're taking the programme to the 19th of November 2024, and also to invite members to suggest topics for inclusion in the committee's forward programme. The appendix is on page 187, and that outlines the forward programme to November 2024. And if I could just bring the committee back to the recommendation at 2.1, the committee is asked to approve the following recommendation: that the report and outlined forward programme for the meetings of the Risk and Audit Scrutiny Committee to the 19th of November 2024 be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Elizabeth Ann. And just to encourage people, if you do have anything that you want to bring in, to bring forward to this committee, please feel free to do so and contact myself or anyone else on the committee. Anyone else on the administrative support on the committee. So just to ask the committee to note that report, and thank you, Elizabeth Ann, for presenting it, and I'll move it, and looking for a seconder, please. Councillor Fulton.
I'll second this.
Thanks, Councillor Fulton. Okay, and with that, I think we're concluded the business of today. So thanks everyone very much for all the hard work put into the reports that you've presented today, and the officers as well. So thank you very much. Oh, and there's no items of urgent business. So thank you. And thanks for keeping me right, Elizabeth. And okay, thank you very much. Bye.